An excerpt from chapter 4 of Joan Halifax's book, Being with Dying. The Wooden Puppet and Iron Man, Selfless Compassion, Radical Optimism. Over the years, people have asked me questions like, how can you touch someone whose body is covered with lesions? Isn't it difficult to be around so much pain and suffering? Don't you feel worn out from giving so much? What kind of gratification is there in doing this kind of work when the outcome is death? Don't people's emotions overwhelm you? Isn't it frightening to be around dying all the time? Don't you get numb from facing loss and sorrow so often? In the beginning, it wasn't easy. It did not come naturally or instinctively. Working so closely with death often scared me. I was afraid I might get what the dying person had. When I recognized, however, that I already have what dying people have, mortality, I stopped being afraid of catching it. Recognizing this very interconnectedness is the ground of giving no fear and the beginning of compassion. Patient and caregiver are one and the same, connected by life and death as by suffering and joy. When we manage to step through fear by reconnecting with each other, real compassion arises. Zen uses the images of the Iron Man and the wooden puppet to describe giving no fear. The Iron Man or Iron Woman embodies compassion through unshakable strength and equanimity. He exemplifies the three qualities of resoluteness, resilience, and durability. He's not attached to outcome and has absolutely no interest in offering consolation. He expresses love without pity. With his deep equanimity, the Iron Man works from a pivot of intention that allows him to be fully present and immovable in this very moment. He puts himself in a difficult position and is strengthened by it as he offers strength to it. This is the very heart of our work with being with dying, this ongoing practice of sublime defeat, like a tempered sword, defeated by the fire and pounded to become strong. My father was an Iron Man as he faced his death. A friend with AIDS was an Iron Man as he lay in my arms and accepted his death as a gift to all those who suffered like him. One caregiver friend showed an Iron Woman's strength as she sat quietly by her mother's bedside, bearing witness to 4 days of unrelenting, wild anger that finally resolved into bliss at the moment of her mother's death. The other Buddhist image for giving no fear is the wooden puppet, a very different kind of symbol for compassion. The puppet simply responds to the world as it is. There is no self, there is no other. Someone is hungry, food is given. Someone is thirsty, drink is offered. Someone is sleepy, a bed is made. For the wooden puppet, the world is the puppeteer to which she seamlessly responds without strategy, motivation, or thought of outcome. She can always be counted on because her front is soft and open. To be a wooden puppet is to bear witness and respond to suffering with a tenderness that knows no bounds. The wooden puppet and the Iron Man both practice what I call radical optimism. They don't have expectations about a specific outcome, about dying a good death, or being a perfect caregiver. And because they don't have these ideas or expectations, they can really practice optimism. This kind of optimism arises directly out of not knowing. It is free of time and space, self and other, yet it is embedded in the very stuff of our daily lives. This might sound cryptic, but it has real meaning in being with dying. When I sit with a dying person, or with prisoners in maximum security at the local penitentiary, if I allow one single thought of outcome to rear its head, the truth of the moment dies. I've stopped being with what is, and I've started to have ideas about the way I think it should be. People often ask me about having a good death. But in the view of the radical optimist, there is no good or bad death. Being with dying is simply being with dying. Each being does it his or her way, with no gaining idea, no attachment to outcome. The radically optimistic caregiver bears witness and gives no fear. An old Zen saying offers another way of putting it. Fishing with a straight hook, meaning don't look for results, whether at the beginning, in the middle, or at the end. Just exist in the right now. A friend of mine with AIDS struggled long and hard in his dying, but he finally came to a place where, after a lot of pain, he decided that he was suffering for all the men who had Kaposi's sarcoma. In this way, he brought himself into peace. As he felt his connection with all those bodies bloomed with purple lesions, his self-absorption left him, and he was flooded with love. He told me one day that he could see why Christ's suffering was a model for ours. When you suffer along with everyone else, he said. In his pain, he knew he was not alone. As he spoke, I saw a tear of relief slide slowly down his cheek. His fingers reached out to mine. There was nothing to say. We simply let our fingers touch and intertwine. He then asked me to hold him and sing. As I held him, he looked like a small, emaciated child, purple blooms covering his body. He sighed in tune with the simple song he had requested. For a time, he was completely relaxed and seemed to be free of pain. And I relaxed too. He had given both of us a deep reason to live and to let go. A spiritual life is not about being self-conscious or wearing a button that says, I'm a bodhisattva. It's about doing what you have to do, with no attachment to outcome. True compassion just does what needs to be done because it's the only thing to do, just because it's natural and ordinary, like smoothing your pillow at night. Sometimes the outcome can seem to be a happy one, and often enough we are faced with so-called failure, and thus it is. There's a famous Zen story about compassion that consists of a dialogue between two brothers, Tao Wu and Yun Yen. It goes like this. Yun Yen asked Tao Wu, what does the Bodhisattva of great compassion use so many hands and eyes for? Wu said, it's like someone reaching back, groping for a pillow in the middle of the night. Yen said, I understand. Wu said, how do you understand it? Yen said, all over the body are hands and eyes. Wu said, you have said quite a bit there, but you've only said 80% of it. Yen said, what do you say, elder brother? Wu said, throughout the body, our hands and eyes. This conversation seems kind of mysterious until we think of what a bodhisattva really is, a Buddhist archetype of compassion and fearlessness, an awakened being who has vowed to come back lifetime after lifetime in order to save others from suffering. Bodhisattvas could leave our world of pain and suffering behind forever, but they deliberately choose to be reborn into the terrible and beautiful wilderness of life to practice compassion. Earthly bodhisattvas are those men and women whose wooden puppets and iron men who have dedicated their lives to awakening these qualities, whether caregivers or those receiving care. In the metaphor Yunyan uses, they're covered with eyes that see others' needs and hands that reach out to help. So this exchange between the two brothers teaches us that true compassion, with its myriad hands and eyes, is every bit as natural and ordinary as pulling the pillow toward your head in the darkness of night. Then Dawu goes further. He observes that compassion is like the blood in our body, like the nerves running through our fingers. It is our whole being. In total compassion, Dawu suggests, throughout the whole body, we feel and give no fear.